I recently realised that I've spent my whole 20s in and out of therapy. I've spent over 100 hours sitting in a therapist's chair. I know that not everyone can access therapy the way that I have, so I thought I would summarise the 5 key things that I've learned in over 100 hours of therapy, in the hopes that it can help someone. And also, if you're just curious about my therapy experience, hopefully it can scratch that itch. Because I don't talk about it all that much, I don't think. Everyone gets angry. It's just about how you handle it. I insisted to my first therapist that I was not an angry person. I said I didn't feel anger in my body, and I believed myself. I did not feel anger. Little did I know, I had signed myself up for a therapist that specialised in anger. The joke was on me. We spent the next 1.5 years tackling anger. And she taught me that the things that I called frustration, annoyance, they're all anger. And what I actually thought was keeping the peace was sometimes avoidance. I was terrified of anger, of experiencing anger, or of seeming angry. But anger is a necessary emotion, just like all the others. If you've seen Inside Out, you know what I mean. And you need to make space for it, or it will make you sick. And specifically resentment, which I think I'll talk about a bit later on in the video, but that affects you the worst. So yeah, anger is not a shameful emotion. It's about how you express it. If you want to know a bit about the anger work we did, she would make me hit pillows with baseball bats. She would make me scream. She made me yell. Oh, I found it so deeply uncomfortable, but it really did help me deal with those feelings. If you're like me and you're a bottler, then maybe look into booking a rec room. They have slots and they have them in like some cities and I don't know, some towns. You can go in, book a slot, and then they give you a thing to cause the damage and a thing to damage, and you do that for a while. I've also found that exercise is great for working through anger. And I also recently tried axe throwing, which was a surprising hit, no pun intended. And in a healthy dose, anger can also be channeled into motivation. It's a great driver for fixing injustice in the world, or sometimes to prove people wrong. But as I said, healthy doses, and make sure you're supported emotionally too. Weirdly, speaking about anger actually links very well into the film that I have just watched, which is in partnership with Sky Cinema. It's called To Catch a Killer, and it follows the story of Eleanor, who is trying to uncover who committed a mass shooting. The first thing that struck me is that it is immaculately shot. It's a really beautiful watch, and the score is really amazing as well. I was completely in the zone. It was not the kind of film where I could be on my phone or like kind of passively watch. And the acting was incredible. It stars Shailene Woodley, everyone's queen of action, and she delivered. I liked the way the film subverted expectations around the chief investigator. I really like that you kind of follow Eleanor's journey as she gets to know him. And yeah, I won't reveal too much, but it was super interesting. And also, it was just good to see a female protagonist dodge some typical cliches in the finale, and actually across the whole film. For example, there was no seduction scene, which I feel like is such a trope in crime action films with a female protagonist. I'm so glad they didn't do that. It's not the kind of film I typically go for, but I really enjoyed it. And it's actually opened my mind and made me think I need to watch more thrillers. It's the perfect film for when you want a good distraction. Like, you make yourself a little popcorn and you've got 2 hours in the evening, you're just ready to fully be immersed in a film, and you just want something fresh and something you haven't seen before. I love that I'm still holding my squash, one sec. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, it comes out on Sky Cinema this month. And if that doesn't sound like your cup of tea, Deadshot, the film, is also coming to Sky Cinema, and they've got a rom-com pop-up. Every month there's loads of new stuff. So I will leave a link below where you can watch the trailers to Deadshot and To Catch a Killer. And thank you, Sky, for working with me on this video. Okay, back to the therapy talk. Number 2 was another hard lesson from the beginning of my therapy journey. You don't grow when you're comfortable. Unfortunately, I learned this because I am a comfort seeker. I love living in a distracted bubble when I am stressed. And by a distracted bubble, I mean unhealthy distractions. I'm talking hours scrolling on my phone, just trying not to do the things I need to do to deal with the things that I have to deal with eventually. And add into that lovely pot that I am super risk averse and very cautious. It's a nice gift from mum and dad. So I'm just a nervous girly. So this can really hold me back, both in terms of like short-term decisions that need to be made and in longer term life experience. To get a bit deep, on the personal side, something I've really had to deal with is my fear of confrontation. All through my 20s, this has been a struggle and something I've been actively trying to change. I'm a turtle. I roll into my shell as soon as there is something difficult that I need to deal with, especially interpersonal stuff. So I have to learn to be brave, I have to have courage, and I have to go forward and deal with it head on. Because otherwise, what happened in my teens and my early 20s is that it can leave my relationships resentful and they just upset me for years. They're stagnant, they're not healthy. I'm too afraid to try and fix things because I risk making it worse and I risk them disliking me. But just because you instantly feel fear when you think about a situation does not actually make it bad. In fact, dealing with it can lead to personal growth. So yeah, as I said, my entire 20s has now been characterized by doing the difficult thing that I've been trying to avoid to try and deal with it instead of holding it in, finding it suffocating and letting resentment build within me. And it has not been easy, but eventually it does make things better. And ultimately it's helping me for whatever the future holds. There's gonna be bigger things that happen to me in my life, really uncomfortable, really difficult things. And I need to practice now, I think, to be able to deal with those bigger things in the future. And from the moment I started doing this, I started feeling the positive repercussions in my life, and my world is so much wider from all of those times that I looked discomfort in the eye. This next one is a newer one from round 2 of therapy, which has been for the past year and a half. Yeah, it's been nearly a year and a half now. Oh my goodness, it's my 18-month sobriety this month. That's wild. And that is that trauma impacts some people more than others. And the key to coping is cultivating resilience. I used to think that when you experienced a traumatic thing, you instantly became traumatized. And I think I got this idea from years of kind of internet discussion around trauma, which kind of sucks the nuance out of the wider discussion and the actual evidence we have around the experience of traumatized people. But also I don't blame myself because the nuance was not easy to find. But yeah, it led me to question why I experienced some things different to others, why I coped differently to other people, and also led me to minimize a lot of my experiences because I wasn't, having big examples of PTSD, I wasn't having panic attacks. Some things just hadn't affected me in the way that they affected other people. I concluded that it can't have been that bad of an experience because I was kind of fine, at least in the day-to-day. But therapy taught me that trauma is dealt with by different people in different ways. For example, I wasn't even aware that I was coping by numbing out and drinking until like a year into my sobriety. And that was only because I was able to see how different I felt day to day. If you'd asked me at the time, I would not have known that I was managing a near constant level of anxiety by drinking because I wasn't even aware of how anxious I was. And only when it stopped being a daily thing was I able to step back and go, oh, that's what that was. And trauma doesn't have to be a life sentence. In childhood and through to adulthood, you can cultivate resilience that helps you deal with things, what happened before and what is going to happen in the future. When experts have studied trauma, they've realized that cultivating resilience is the key to how different people experience trauma, who gets PTSD and who doesn't. Again, I'll always recommend The Body Keeps the Score. It's a great book. You should definitely check it out. But yeah, your body innately stores things differently depending on how things were for you when the bad incident happened. We can work on developing perspective, gratitude, acceptance, connection, and self-esteem, all of which can be arsenals in our toolkit for helping us recover and remain resilient. So that is what I'm working on. I've realized that some of those have come easier to me than others, and some of them I need to work on a bit. But trauma and traumatic experiences does not mean you are forever going to be locked in certain beliefs, certain behavior patterns, and certain events. And that epiphany is all thanks to a little bit of therapy. I say a little bit, quite a lot. Habits and behaviors are what create change in your thinking. I hate this one. I hate it. But in my experience, behavior change does create thought change. And my therapist knows this, and she knows this about me. When I come to her with a problem, one of the first things she'll say after she's heard me out is, so what have you done so far to fix it? Because she knows that often I haven't taken the steps that I need to, the basic early on steps to try and fix the problem. As I said, I'm an ostrich, I'm a turtle, I stick my head in the sand. Have I talked to the person about it? Have I booked that doctor's appointment? If you are like me, then you know. So yeah, taking a minute to assess which elements of the problem are in my control and which are things I'll have to accept that are out of my control is really important for me and is key not only to resolving the issue but also to accepting the issue as it is. There is a positive to this, which is the knock-on effect of changing your behavior and thus changing your thought patterns is an improvement in self-esteem, which is amazing. My self-esteem is so much better than it was at 21. Building self-esteem has been amazing and has just helped me endlessly in the past 5 years. And self-esteem is just so much more than confidence, which I think is kind of the thing we typically associate with self-esteem. I'm more decisive, I know what I want, I think I'm a more considerate person, and it's because baby step by baby step I've changed my behaviours in certain ways that have also in turn changed my thought patterns. Number 5, and this is a big one from my early therapy days, the good girl complex. It's a poison chalice. When my first therapist turned around to me and said, I thought I was a good girl, I thought, what are you talking about? But she said that I was the good girl. I put loads of pressure on myself to be the best version of me. The most beautiful, the most successful, the most well-liked, the one with the best morning routine. Often I fell short of those ideals because they were ideals. But because I saw them as reality, I saw myself as a failure near constantly. So I beat myself up a lot over where I thought I should be versus where I actually was. I was aspiring to be like the people around me with what I perceived as perfect lives and the people online that I followed. And then there was also this like voice in the back of my head from grammar school being like, you've got to work hard. If you work hard, anything is possible. Maybe it wasn't just a work hard voice, but a work harder voice. And I didn't even identify as a perfectionist because I thought, well, I'm nowhere near perfect. Perfectionists get at least close to perfect. Oh my goodness, I was delusional. And then obviously that spiraled and I felt loads of shame. And shame is, with guilt, the least helpful emotion. Brené Brown will tell you that many a time. Our shame queen, Brené. And the good girl complex reached into every aspect of my life. It even affected my relationships with people. I was so desperate to be liked. I wanted to be seen as easygoing. I wanted to be seen as a great friend. I didn't cancel plans when I needed to, which just left me super drained. In my romantic relationships as well, oh my God, it played into that so much. I was so tolerant of stuff I just should not have been tolerant of. I just wasn't boundaried enough and I was way too accommodating because I feared what would happen if I stood my ground. I thought I need for everyone to think I'm great when I was sitting there thinking I was a terrible person. If you see yourself in this, do not be shocked because a part of it is definitely the patriarchal ideal from what women should be, kind of just being pushed onto us from such an early age. It's a systemic perspective internalized by us. It's by design. They want to keep us weak and preoccupied and small. A straitjacket disguised as empowerment. I feel like everything I make at the moment comes back to the patriarchy, capitalism and individualism. So yeah, so much of my early time in therapy was unpacking all of that and reducing the pressure that I was putting on myself. Because yeah, I just tied my self-worth to how early I got out of bed, how many videos I made, how healthily my meals were made, like what? And I was terrified of being seen as lazy, so I just cranked the volume up on all of it. Taking that all apart piece by piece was not fun, but it was so good for me. For a while, I worried about unpacking it because I felt like some of those characteristics were really beneficial to me, like being so aware in social situations and making sure everyone felt included and that I was being the nicest version of myself possible, or eating really well, or achieving a lot and getting closer and closer to my dreams because of all the pressure I was putting on myself. But I couldn't enjoy or appreciate any of those achievements because I set the bar so high. Nothing I achieved felt substantial. I'd turn around and look at those social interactions and I'd pick them apart for not being good enough. And I realised over time that if you lean into the good girl, you'll never be happy because you'll never be enough. So yeah, I let her go. On a final note, it's a bit bleak, but therapy didn't solve all my problems and it won't solve yours. It's an amazing starting point for if you're feeling stuck or lost or you're in a crisis, but it isn't a magic fix. Kind of like I said earlier, it needs to be one of the many tools in your toolkit. And you can build up the toolkit over time. And you can start with just showing up once a week and unpacking all your stuff. The things it will help you with is identifying your patterns and your thinking and where things might be going wrong. But you then have to take that information and work out how you're going to make changes and apply them. So yeah, baby steps every day. And maybe that's catching yourself in a negative thought spiral and turning things around. Perhaps that's holding yourself accountable, or perhaps that's taking 30 seconds and not acting on your first thought. And I say this to hopefully be a bit reassuring that if you can't get yourself to therapy, not all hope is lost. You can still change things. I'll leave some resources that have helped me in the description and some that I think might be helpful for you as well. And we can also use the comments. If you have a resource that you think would be really helpful for people, please leave it below. If you did like the video, please give it a like and subscribe if you're new around here. I've learned a lot in therapy. I've really appreciated it. And hopefully this gives you a little flavour as to the things that just realising things that I've realised. And thank you Sky Cinema for sponsoring a portion of this video. We love Sky Cinema around here. And let me know your thoughts on To Catch a Killer because I want to know. See you in my next video.